Hi, welcome back. We're still on the vertebral column. And we're moving on to cervical vertebrae. So these are tinier, right? So I'm going down the list that you have also. And in cervical vertebrae, we have a couple listed there. The first is the C1 or the atlas. Looks different, right? C1 of the atlas. And C2, look at this guy, looks really different. Or the axis. Okay, so the axis is interesting because it has this little, it's called odontoid process. And let me put it over here. There we go. This is going to allow this rotation because it has this little tooth there. It's going to allow this rotation so that we can collect this. I always think it would be fantastic if you could do that all the way down the spine. You could rotate around, but you can't. You can do that. You can do that on C1 and C2. Okay, so those are the first listed. Atlas is the top one, the superior one way up here. And it makes sense. It's holding up the world, the atlas. Okay, and the axis then is the one that has an axis for something to rotate on. So atlas and axis. Next, it says identify the structure specific to these cervical vertebrae. And the first one there is then the odontoid process. Odontoid means tooth-like. So it's a tooth-like sticking up. Odontoid process, or also called the dens. You can name it each one of those. Either one of those is correct. So dens or odontoid process. And many of these, I'm going to show you a different one that's not 102. Okay, this different one then has a spinous process. Remember the spinous process that was the nose of the giraffe in the other one? And in this one, it has a split. Do you notice here? So that split there is bifid, bi meaning two, bifid spinous process. And you'll see that only in these cervical vertebrae. So if I showed you one of these on a test and it had this spinous process that was split like this, and I said, what part of the body is this from? Is this cervical? Is it thoracic? Or is it lumbar? You would know that there's only one possibility, and that is cervical. Another difference that these have, remember the transverse processes that were the bone that sticks out laterally? Well, on these, get up closer to the camera, they have a little hole through them. See? So that's another foramen. And that foramen is the transverse foramen. And why is it called transverse? It's called transverse because it goes through the transverse process. A little foramen that's not seen. My camera goes one way and the other. Okay, so that's the transverse process. A transverse foramen. When I go back to the thoracic vertebra, we want to see what is special or different about the one that's just on the thoracic, which is the one that's the giraffe, the one that looks like a giraffe. And because, I have to show you on here, because all the thoracic vertebrae have a rib attached onto them, there's going to be a marking that rib leaves as it pushes along that bone. So what we're going to look for is where, and there's a marking on the transverse process because it's there. And then I'm going to turn it around. And then on the body, inside, there's going to be another location where those bump into each other. And every time it bumps into it, it's going to leave some sort of marking. So on your list, you have a transverse costal facet. So if it's transverse, it means it's on these transverse processes. And I'm going to turn it around for you. And have you noticed that here, there's an indentation. Like I can put my little finger on there. So that's what a facet really is. It's like if you were to push in to a yoga mat and it leaves a little dent. That's what a dent's in. A facet is, sorry. It's that indentation left behind. So in this position, posterior then, you're going to have a facet, a transverse facet, because that's where this rib is going to touch. So I'm going to have a rib coming out in this way, and it's going to make an indentation on that bone. So that's a transverse costal meaning rib, facet. And then superior and inferior costal facets that are actually on the body. So on the body there, you're going to see another sort of indentation on the yoga mat kind of thing, one above and one below. So above and below, and those are going to be on the body. Remember why on the body? Because if I turn this around here, the ribs are going to, excuse me, not that, yeah, here, let me show you up here. So the rib is going to push on that region of the body, and one rib is going to push on the top part, and then the lower rib is going to push on the bottom part. So on the body itself, a facet again, and a facet looks like a finger pushing down on it, and you're going to have one above and one below. And those are going to be called superior and inferior costal facets. Okay? And then the spinous process. So the spinous process, this nose of the giraffe, really is not seen in the other regions. Notice you can feel it on your whole back also. It's sort of as it protrudes. So you have the bump, 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 bump. You're not going to see that in the cervical. And then these are going to look more like a moose. I'm going to show you in a little bit. It doesn't look like a giraffe. So they really aren't as pointy. It's going to be more blunt. So these are blunter. They have to be heavier. They're going to take the weight of a lot of the weight of your body. So they're going to have a different shape down here. And you know how many people have lower back pain, and that's because the weight of this upper body is really pushing on that. So let me show you then a lumbar as I turn my page here and show you the moose. So here's the moose. Can you tell that it's a moose? And do you notice how the spinous process is not pointy? So these are more like a moose here, and these are the lumbar vertebrae. So these don't have a lot that anything different. They're still going to have, the transverse process. They're still going to have a body and the foramen. So there's nothing dramatically different from the moose, other than you need to know that one is the one that's lumbar. You're going to be able to compare it to, one that's the giraffe and a lot pointier. Okay, different. This sort of points out posteriorly and this inferiorly. Okay. The last thing we want to look at is sacral vertebrae. So the sacrum here, and I'm going to have to take a dive down here to find my bone that I want to show you. And there is the sacrum fused, and on that, we're going to call the whole thing the sacrum. On that, we have sacral foramina. So foramina is the plural of foramen. And I'm going to show you posteriorly. It's sort of easier to see. You see all the little holes in there. Those are not holes. They're foramina. So they are foramens of the sacrum. So they're sacral foramina. Auricular surface. So the auricular surface I'm going to rotate is this sort of ear-like surface. Do you notice if I put it laterally, it kind of looks like an ear. So this ear here is called the auricular surface. And notice on my guy here that it's going to form a joint with the pelvic bone. So it's called the os coccyx. You'll see that later. So my computer fell asleep as we are recording. Okay, so that's the auricular surface, and the sacral canal, I want you to skip. The sacral canal is not seen in these bones that are plastic, but it's actually where nerves can actually come down through the sacrum and then out through the foramina. But because these are reproductions and they're plastic, you don't really see that. We're going to skip that one. The sacral promontory is this whole ridge here. Do you notice this ridge that's going on? And it's a promontory. That word in English means pathway or ridge. So it's the entire ridge. And just think what's happening here. It's connecting to the last lumbar vertebra. So it's the place where the lumbar vertebra connects, but promontory more specifically is sort of the rim, not the whole body. And then the other we want to look at, the last structure we want to look at is the coccyx. So here, get my hand out of the way, are the little bones that make up your tailbone. And in this one, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 that is shown there. And those would be part of the coccyx, your tailbone. So that then put us through all the bones of the vertebral column. So what you want to do, again, I just want to reiterate this, that you want to be able to recognize them. I'll be able to show you the moose and say, which is this? Is it from the lumbar area? Is it thoracic? You need to know what region the body is from. And then recognize the structures that are on the different bones. How are you going to do that? You're going to look at diagrams. You're going to look at diagrams on your Connect, and also diagrams from your book. And you'll be able to tell what these are. Okay. Later as a review, I'll be able to show you some of these on a different anatomy program. If you get some of those apps, there are some apps that are quite affordable. I know I got one of mine for 99 cents. It sort of fluctuates between costing $8 and 99 cents, and I just got it on a day that was 99 cents. It's super helpful. So you can look up each of these bones and find what these structures that we want you to know, what they're called. You'll find sometimes that there's more structures that other programs or books will label. We only need you to know the ones that are listed. Okay? All right, I think we're on to a good start. Take care.